Good evening. I told you this morning we would talk about a lesson on contentment. Two words that kind of come together really when you think about the contentment. But we start with Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 through 30. Jesus said, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." And he says, "Come to me and I will give you rest." He's not talking about retirement, right? Because there's always going to be work to do. As long as we're on this earth, there's going to be work to do. As long as you live in the panhandle of Texas, there's going to be dust that has to be dusted, right? Amen. Right, GW?
Amen.
There are weeds that are going to have to be pulled out of the flower beds. There's just fences that have to be put up to keep the dogs in. See, I can name most all those things that are going to have to happen. Yeah, it's there. Okay? There's always something to do. So that's not really the rest that Jesus is talking about. He's talking about a peace of mind. He's talking about a contentment that he wants his disciples to have. Now, we'll start off with this. Many desire contentment, but go out of their way to find it in all the wrong places. A poll was taken several years ago. Americans were asked, what would you do for $10 million? You think about it, what would you do for $10 million? 5% said they would abandon their family for $10 million. Hey, I think there are a lot of people that abandon their family for a whole lot less. Okay, but for $10 million, that was the standard that they used. 25% would abandon their church. 23% would become prostitutes for a week. 16% would give up their American citizenship. 16% would leave their spouse. 3% would put their children up for adoption. Hey, at least some of the things there are more appropriately in order, all right? But it goes on even deeper than that in considering things. 2/3 of those polled agreed that they would be willing to abandon at least one of these options. 2/3 of the people. Right? Some would have been willing to do several of these things. But what's important to understand is that the majority was not willing to leave empty-handed. They were willing to abandon these things with the hopes that the $10 million would grant them contentment. $10 million would be satisfaction. Rolling Stone says you can't get no satisfaction, right? And that's truly the way it is in life. Well, why is it that there are so many people, even in what we would consider the greatest nation that this world has ever known, why are so many people so uncontent, miscontent, discontent, whatever you want to call it? They lack the contentment that they would be willing to give things up, that somehow $10 million could make them content, that they would give up family, give up morals, give up ethics, do strange things to seek out contentment. There are a few questions that we can ask ourselves so that we may find the things that lead to contentment. And that's just basically what I'm going to talk about tonight, address with you tonight, just questions concerning contentment. And the first question, basically, what would make you content? What will it take to make me, what will it take to make you content? Hebrews chapter 13, verse 5, the very first part says, keep your life free from the love of money and be content with what you have. Of course, we just looked at that poll for $10 million, people would do some pretty bad things. Well, the main subject of this verse, Hebrews chapter 13, verse 5, is the Christian way of life. Hotropos in the Koine Greek. Hotropos, the way. All right? The way of life. The way of life. And, okay, keep your life or your way of life free from the love of money. Why? Because it's apparent a love of money would cause you to seek contentment in things that are not appropriate, things that are immoral, things that are unethical, things that are certainly not God-like. It must not be a money-loving way of life, this whole hotropos that the Hebrew writer is talking about. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 10. You've probably heard this passage many times. For the love of money is the root of all kind of evil. It is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves through with many pangs. And of course, we think of Judas. There was Judas, a man who for 3.5 years walked with Jesus and the other apostles, but in the end sold Jesus out for 30 pieces of silver and then went out and committed suicide. Did he find contentment in those 30 pieces of silver? Absolutely not. Do you think he'd have found contentment in $10 million? Probably not. Money wasn't the root of his contentment, though, was it? No, he thought it was, but it wasn't. It wasn't something that was going to satisfy him. Be satisfied with the things God has given you. That's a big challenge for us, isn't it? But you know, that was part of the law in the Old Testament. Part of the Ten Commandments. Exodus chapter 20, verse 17. Listen to this. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male servant, or his female servant, or his ox, or his donkey, or anything that is your neighbor's. What your neighbor's got's his. He's got his own set of problems, right? Whatever your problems are your own set of problems. You know, if you covet what he's got, all you're going to do is exchange your set of problems for his set of problems. That isn't going to work. Okay? Why would we exchange one set of problems for another set of problems? Doesn't help. What we have to do is be happy, be satisfied, find contentment with what we have. We got to work with what we have. Listen, what is it? The prayer, Lord, help me to give you the courage to change the things that I can.
Wisdom to know the difference.
Yeah, that comes a little bit later. But to accept the patience, or whatever, to accept the things I can't change, and wisdom to know the difference. Yeah. That's a big thing in life, and there's some things that we can't change. So, you know, just getting rid of something that we can't change, you know, well, if it's a thing, that's one deal. But relationships, you know, they still have to be worked on. You see that covenant. What's the old saying? The grass is always greener on the other side of the fence. Remember Irma Bombeck's book? The grass is always greener over the septic tank. You know, that's where things really grow. You know why? Well, that's just the way life is. That's where the fertilizer kind of comes up through. But there you have it. There you have it. Think, oh, my life is so bad. The things that I've got going on are so terrible. We don't know what everybody else has going on. What problems would $10 million add to our lives? See, they could add some terrible things. Colossians 3:5 says, "Put to death therefore what is earthly in you, sexual immorality, impurity, passion, evil desire, and covetousness," see, that is a part of the law, "which is idolatry." Now, I don't think it's just covetousness that was idolatry. I think he's talking that all of these things revolve around idolatry. And that's one of the things that we're learning more and more as we see some of the things that are going on in our culture, wherever you see idolatry, you're going to see gross sexual immorality. Wherever you see idolatry, you're going to see impurity. Wherever you see idolatry, you're going to see passion. And when it says passion here, you're going to see people ruled by their passions, not by reason, not by spiritual things, but people who are going to do things because, I just do that because that's the way I feel. I want to feel good. Why are all these people into the drug scene? Start off because it feels good, right? And then it overtakes them, and then they got to do it so they don't feel bad, right? That's part of it. Evil desire, see? Covetousness, yeah. All of that comes under the heading of idolatry. All of it works into idolatry. So the love of money springs from sinful discontent with one's status in life. You have to learn to be content with what we have. It may present itself in possessions, luxuries, or lack of power. How many times do people do things that are I want to say dangerous, but toxic, harmfully toxic to other people, simply because they feel that that's the only way that they have power. Some young person doesn't feel like they are being treated fairly, so they grab a gun and walk into a school and start killing people. Power, right? Why? Is it discontent? It may present, again, possessions, luxuries, lack of power, but it demonstrates a lack of trust. It's a lack of trust in God and the providence of God that we just be taken care of. Be taken care of in this life, because this life is so very short when we consider or compare it to what eternity is. There's really no time frame for it, is there? Because eternity has no time frame. We like to say, 10,000 years, 1,000,000 years. There's no time frame in eternity. It's immeasurable. So what the Old Testament writer and what is mentioned to us in the book of James, life is like a vapor. Comes up, the fog in the morning. You get that little mist that comes up, it's a little bit foggy, but by the time the sun comes up, it's gone. And that's what life is. It's very brief. So the things that we go through in this life, it causes discontent. It's for a very short period of time. Now, Jesus Christ has promised that He will personally care for each and every one of us, but especially for those who are patiently bearing affliction or persecution for His sake. And that's what the second part of Hebrews 13:5 tells us. For He has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. Now the key is that we don't leave Him or forsake Him. So we've got to make sure we're doing our part to be in that relationship with Him. Well, what is that relationship? Well, remember Matthew chapter 10? In the yoke with Him. It's a two-person yoke. He's in one side, we're in the other. We're both pulling together. But if I forsake Him and try to get Him to pull my yoke and His yoke, but pull that yoke by Himself, He's going to get tired of that, isn't He? Because He expects me to do my share. If I'll do my share, He can more than abundantly do His share. He's never going to leave me. He's never going to forsake me. I might walk away from Him, so I've got to do very, very careful. There are no less than 5 negatives in this short sentence in the original Greek. 5 negatives, okay? You can't really pull it out, in the English. He said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. It's like I will never, 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 never leave you. Because there's a little, like a prepositional phrase thing attached to all of that. 5 negatives. It's not going to go. It's going to stay if we will stay with Him. So, it's emphatic. It's energetic. It's an emphatic, energetic affirmation of the providence of God. Jesus said that He would go away, but if He went away, He would send His Spirit. The Spirit would be with us, to dwell in us, as a down payment of what's coming later on. So we have that connection. We have that I want to express it as more than a feeling, but we have that hope. And we have that promise. We have to do our part. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 6, but godliness with contentment is great gain. So if we do our part for godliness, and remember what we talked about this morning in Bible class with the tabernacle, okay? A sacred place. We're doing sacred things at sacred times, right? And if we will do our part with the sacred times and places and things, okay? Do it correctly. Set ourselves apart for His use. That will be the holiness, see? The godliness that we are doing in our part, and then we can have contentment to know that we have a right relationship with God. Paul says that's a greater contentment than having $10 million. That's a greater contentment than anybody can know. Godliness with contentment is great gain. So our value is determined by our relationship with God, not how many material things we've accumulated. That's not what it's about. I've seen signs or little deals, around, whoever dies with the most toys wins. No, that's not how it works, because you can't take them with you. The second thing, the second question that we would ask, are there any unsurrendered worries in my heart, in my life? Is there anything bothering me that I have to really be anxious about? Now, Peter says, 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 7, casting all your anxieties on Him because He cares for you. We've seen how much He cares for us, and we've talked about that 2-person yoke, okay? But He's going to do most of the pulling, and what He says is we can cast our cares on Him. Let Him take care of the anxiety so that we can actually do some work, some real effective, positive laboring. The Greek word for anxieties means to be anxious about something. I'm thinking about it, and I'm not thinking about what I'm doing. Did you ever hear of somebody who runs a stop sign, causes a big accident, and they say, oh, what happened? Well, I had my mind somewhere else. I was thinking about something else. Yeah. It happens all through life, doesn't it? Fred, how is it? What was it that, how is it you put the can opener in the refrigerator instead of in the drawer? I was thinking about something else, apparently, when I did it. But it got there. Somebody found it later. Right? Yeah. things like that happen to us. But yeah, to divide the mind, and there are some things that we have to concentrate on, because if we're not concentrating on it and we make a mistake, people can get hurt. Lives can be at stake. You know what else? Souls can be at stake. Souls can be at stake. This word, in some ways, is used, it's likened to a noose around the neck that will strangle your mind. This anxiety, because it's there, it's dividing the mind, it's like it's choking. It's debilitating the individual. That's why the Bible's constantly talking about don't be anxious about anything. Don't worry. Don't worry about the things you cannot change. Okay? What you can change, change it. Things you can't change, you gotta let them go. Whatever things cause concern to a follower of God, whether they be spiritual or temporal, whether they are great or small, God concerns himself with them. He's concerned with the same things we are. Now, he's not as concerned with the temporal as we are. He's more concerned with the spiritual. But he can take care of the temporal through his providence. And how many times do we see that if we'll stop worrying about it, he'll work it out? He's going ahead of us with the Holy Spirit, getting the path ready. Okay? So we worry about, how am I going to pay this bill? How am I going to get this done? And then something happens, we get paid. Get done. What are you punching her for? You worry too. I know you do. But there's several things in life like that. How are we going to get through this? How am I going to deal with this? You know, and I talk about the struggles sometimes that I go through at work. Sometimes you just got to back off and say, hey, whatever happens is going to happen. And then you see something happening over here, and that solved that situation in a hurry. I didn't have to say anything. I didn't have to do anything. There are times when you got to stand up. You got to say something because that's the position you're in. Lots of times we make our own worries because we make mountains out of molehills. That's that old phrase, isn't it? So, God concerns himself with things that concern us. So, he's going to help. He's got the answers. Okay? It's just, we've got to do it on his time frame. Psalm 55, verse 22, cast your burden on the Lord, and he will sustain you. He will never permit the righteous to be moved. How would you like to have been Joseph in the Old Testament? Your brothers sold you into slavery. They didn't like you in the first place, right? The slavers sell you into Potiphar's house, gets in trouble there, he gets thrown into prison. He does pretty good there. Then he thinks he's going to get out. And the guy who he helps doesn't remember him for a long time. If there's ever a person who deserved to give up, it would have been Joseph. But he didn't. And everything turned out all right because God had a plan. God was going to work it out for him. Now, in all of our afflictions, God's afflicted. Think about Stephen. When Stephen was being persecuted and Stephen was being stoned, Stephen looked up, saw the throne of God, Jesus at the right hand of the throne of God. What was Jesus doing? Standing up. He wasn't sitting for it. Well, he didn't stop it, did he? He didn't stop it. No, Stephen was going to go to his great reward. Something happened to the guy who the ones who were throwing the stones laid their coats by. Yeah. He was blinded for a little while, wasn't he? He repented. And he was saved. Well, I wonder how Stephen felt about that. I think Stephen was like the angels in heaven. More joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 just who need no repentance. Stephen says, my death counted for something. That's like Christ's death counted for something. Oh, wow. Who knows? He who knows that God cares for him has no need of anxious care about himself. We don't have to worry about stuff. But we do anyway. What a great contentment comes to us when we truly believe that God watches over us. Third question. Am I seeking true contentment or worldly contentment? And that would be the dividing line, wouldn't it? That's where we really, what Firestone said, it's where the rubber meets the road, okay, in the sermon. What am I seeking? True contentment or worldly contentment? In Luke chapter 12, verse 13 through 21, Jesus tells a parable. Well, I'm sorry, no, it's not a parable. He's teaching, and some guy in the crowd says, Master, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me. We've talked about it a couple different times in sermons and such, okay? And Jesus said, who made me a judge or a ruler over you? He didn't want to deal with the civil matter. Why? See, he's there about spiritual things, okay? But he goes on to teach about covetousness. And again, we don't know the circumstances, whether this man was cheated truly, or whether he just wanted more than what he was entitled to get. Whatever it is, let's assume that he was being cheated. Jesus is saying that, listen, if that's what you're worried about, we might say, if you came to church so that you would get more of an inheritance, you came to church for the wrong reason. All right? What Jesus is saying, beware of covetousness. He wanted an earthly judgment. He wanted a worldly judgment. He was there to hear Jesus preach, but he was more concerned with the inheritance than he was with the message that Jesus was bringing about the gospel of the kingdom. So Jesus suggested that a spiritual solution would be a much better solution. He wanted a worldly solution. Jesus said, a spiritual solution would be much better. Well, Jesus knew that to settle this case civilly, take it to court, okay? A judge is going to decide the matter, what's going to happen, regardless of what the outcome is. Somebody's going to go away mad. Whichever one loses the case, somebody's going to go away mad, angry, upset, probably with a grudge. That's not a good deal. Now you think of it this way. Back during World War II, right after World War II, there were problems in the Middle East, right? There'd been a war. The Syrians, Turkey had that whole area that's now the Middle East under their control, and they sided with the Germans, with the Nazis during World War II. So they were defeated. So there was a big push to have a little section of land there given to the Jews who had been persecuted in Europe as a homeland. Remember? You heard about it? And, they've been fighting about that ever since, haven't they? Because the Jews have been given it, and the Arabs want it back. That was a worldly solution, wasn't it? To a spiritual problem. Well, what was the spiritual problem? Hatred. One group hates the other group hates the other group. Pretty much. Are they ever going to have peace? No. Is there ever going to be a worldly solution to it? No. There's only going to be a spiritual solution. At some point, somebody has to say, you know what, this little piece of land isn't worth all these wars, isn't worth all this fighting. It just isn't worth it. They're not going to do it. Because it's not within their spirits. Now, there might be a few out of all those millions of people who will, but no. Money, property, it's not going to solve the problem because it's a spiritual problem. It's a heart problem. Luke chapter 12, verse 34. Jesus said, for where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. So if your heart is set on worldly contentment, I want that piece of property. I want that inheritance. And if that's all you can think about, what's it doing? It's choking you. It's got your mind divided. Can you really think about God in a positive way if you're thinking on things of that nature? Probably not. So you'll never know true contentment in that situation. If your heart is set on contentment with God, no man can destroy that contentment when you find it. No. So, what do we got here? Philippians chapter 4, verses 6 and 7. Apostle Paul says, do not be anxious about anything. But in everything, by prayer, supplication, and thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. What? Put the burden on God. Cast your cares on Him. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Jesus, the Prince of Peace, stands at the door and knocks. Let's search for the material things of life that are eventually going to be burned up when the peace and contentment that Jesus offers is free and it's eternal. It's never going to be destroyed. Please. Do not forsake the eternal voice of God. That's the biggest mistake we could ever make, isn't it? Good moral of the story. Good ending to the lesson, I think. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. If you have any, let request